Hi guys, it's David from Automotive Press. I'm kind of excited this week because I'm driving a car with a very important nameplate. That's Toyota Crown. This is a Crown Signia actually. But the reason why this is important to me is because I grew up in Japan and Crown has always been the real flagship of Toyota way before Lexus was even introduced. So I have a very special memories with the Crown. Even though my family never owned it, we always kind of looked up to that nameplate since it is a flagship of Toyota, and Toyota is a flagship company in Japan for many years. So even though you might think Toyota Crown is another crossover from Toyota, I think it's a lot more unique and a lot more special than you might realize, just because of the Crown name, but also for other reasons. So let me tell you 7 reasons why I think the Crown Signia is unique and special. Let's go. Welcome back. So first, let's go through the Crown Signia in terms of my quality audit, and let's see how good the thing is made. It is built in Japan. In fact, all the Crowns are built in Japan, and this one is specifically built in Tsutsumi plant, which is a factory I've been to a number of times. It's a plant that produces many different types of Toyota models. But let's take a look to see if this is any different from any other Toyota cars that are built in Japan. So first, the gap as usual, and 3.5 millimeter there. A bit wider at 3.8, but nice and flat and well aligned. And between the door and the front fender, it's also about 3.6 millimeter there, 3.7 and 3.5. So I think it's kind of right up there in terms of all the best ones I've seen from Japan. Better than the RAV4, better than the Highlander, but not quite as good as some of the Lexus model from, let's say, Tahara, like the GX models are around 3 millimeters. So not quite as good as those, but in terms of the general quality check, I think this is right up there with some of the best Toyota cars. And certainly the panel really well matched and everything lines up. Even the gas cap, which is always hard to do, is nice and flush, nothing sticking out. More than that, I'm actually really impressed with the paint job, which has a real glossy finish, lots of clear coat. In fact, just looking at it, I can tell that this paint must be a bit thicker than other Toyota cars because the clear coat, it has a real depth to it. So let's use my paint thickness gauge and check for the thickness of the paint in each panel. 167 microns. You want the paint thickness to be between 100 to 150 microns. So this is actually thicker than most Toyota cars. 173, actually really good thickness. 145, usually it's a little bit thinner by the doors. 165, and one more at the rear fender here. 196. So actually the paint thickness is as thick, or in some cases a bit thicker than even Lexus models. So they must be using a paint process for the Crown that is different from your normal Toyota cars. It's clearly same level as Lexus, so either they added additional clear coat, or just paint itself is a little bit thicker, or they added a little bit more flakes for this metallic paint. Regardless, the paint quality is right up there with some of the best one I've seen from Lexus. And of course, the measurement tells the truth, right? It's thicker than almost every Toyota cars I've seen, and it's about the same thickness or even thicker than most Lexus models. So I'm really happy with the quality of the fit and finish, and that would be one of the reasons why this car is special. But what else makes this car special? Well, the first and foremost is the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, Crown nameplate is very special to me and very special for many Japanese people because it has been the flagship nameplate, and Crown brand has been around way before Lexus was introduced, and it always stood for something. So the fact that we even have a Crown name brought back to North America, I think that alone is a very special thing to, at least to me and for many of you guys as well. Because I never expected Toyota to bring this nameplate back to North America. It's been absent for many decades. But the reason why we have it is because Akio Toyoda said he also grew up remembering the Crown name because his dad owned several different Crown models, and therefore he really wanted the Crown to come back globally, not just in Japan, but to go all over the world. And that's why we have the Crown name. So the first reason why it's special is the fact that this is Crown, and the name alone means something. The second thing to keep in mind is that this is not your normal crossover. What do I mean by that? Well, this one is actually called a Crown Estate in Japan. In fact, they just launched it just recently. And in Japan, they call it Estate, meaning this is a station wagon. That's the term they use in Europe and also in Japan. But here we just call it Crown Signia. But you can kind of take a look at the profile and you can tell immediately that it is not sitting up high like a normal crossover, like a Highlander or RAV4. It's just low on the ground, and this kind of low slung design is a telltale sign that this is really designed to be a station wagon or call it estate, which is a better name perhaps. And therefore that is unique because all the crossovers typically from Toyota is the normal SUV style crossover with the higher roof. It sits a little bit higher off the ground. And in fact, there aren't really too many manufacturers producing crossover with this style. Volvo is one of them because they still have a wagon. But most automakers have basically canceled their station wagons, and therefore there aren't that many wagon style crossovers anymore. So I was kind of surprised that they brought the estate back, because I was thinking that Toyota will never bring this particular version of the Crown to the North American market. So I really like the fact that we have a low slung, sportier, better looking crossover that is more like a wagon than an SUV. The third point I want to bring up is the fact that this may be the best looking Toyota ever. I don't really care if you call it estate or crossover or SUV or whatever you call it. Regardless, the design is spectacular. The front design, of course, is more of a traditional new Toyota design with a bit of a grille here built into the front. That looks a little bit like a Lexus, and we got the hammerhead design here. So those parts are not all that special in the sense that many Toyota cars look like this, including the new Camry. But if you kind of look at just the overall design, because it's more of a wagon than SUV, as I mentioned earlier, but put together with the large wheels, low profile, even some spoilers in the front, blackout trims, and the whole thing looks like a cool car. I think it's the best looking Toyota to ever come out from Toyota, but also just best looking crossover, period. If you compare this to all the other crossovers or SUV type models out there, they all kind of look very practical and functional and decent looking. But this is more like a European design, something that you might see from Audi or BMW, and yet it's a Toyota. So I think the design is beautiful. Most people will come up to me and say, what is this car? It looks great. And I think they did a great job. So it is definitely the best looking Toyota ever. The fourth reason why I think the Crown Signia is special is the fact that it is the only Toyota model that truly feels like a Lexus. For that matter, if you take the Toyota badge out and put the Lexus emblem in, you wouldn't even know the difference because it feels so much like a Lexus model. It's quiet, it drives really refined. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. It looks like a Lexus from the front or even from the side. So if you just look at it quickly, you might just assume this is a Lexus, even though the price doesn't reflect that. So I think in terms of the design, the overall feel is pretty close to Lexus. Now there are some differences, of course, but the differences are much smaller than you might think. So for example, last week I had a Lexus RX as a press car. This week I have the Crown Signia, and driving them back to back, I realized, okay, the Lexus RX does feel a little bit more special. It's a bit more spacious, and it does have the Lexus feel in some ways. But honestly, for most of you, 95% of you, you wouldn't know the difference between driving a Lexus RX and Crown Signia because they both feel really similar. Maybe the biggest difference would be the powertrain, because this is a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine versus the 2.4 turbo in the RX. But aside from that, the look and feel and the basic environment is exactly like a Lexus, and that makes this Crown quite special. Before I go to the next point, I did want to take you on a quick drive here so you can get a feel for what's going on. And even though I keep saying that this feels like a Lexus RX, and it does, but I will say that engine and powertrain is a bit underwhelming, because this one has the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine with a hybrid system. So basically it's the same hybrid system you find in RAV4 hybrid, in the Highlander hybrid, and it's more than adequate. It's not super fast, but it is a bit noisy when you step on the gas as the hybrid and the engine tries to work with each other. And also the overall feel, it is kind of like a Lexus, as I mentioned, but the intrusion of the engine sound takes away from the experience. So if I were to step on the gas a little bit here, I'll just show you right now. So you probably can't hear too much in the video, but you can hear the roar of the engine, and that seems to kind of almost counteract everything else with the car, because it just feels like a Lexus, except for the sound of the engine and the fact that it is a bit underpowered. So I do wish that they will bring either the plug-in hybrid version of the Crown to North America, or change the powertrain to give us a 2.4 turbo with or without hybrid, just like the one that's in the Crown sedan, because that powertrain will be way peppier in this vehicle. So that would be the only disappointing thing about the Crown so far in terms of driving character. But otherwise, everything else about this vehicle is pretty close to perfection, and I like it a lot. And I have a little bit more to tell you about why the Crown is unique. And that brings me to the fifth point, which is the fact that if you look at the pricing of the Crown Signia compared to Lexus RX or something similar, well, you realize this is actually a really good value. It's a bit odd to say that a car costing at this price range is good value, but it is if you compare it to other luxury cars in the same market, because all of them cost quite a bit more. And in particular, I'm comparing to Lexus RX, which is a little bit bigger, it's a bit more luxurious, but it's also $10,000 to $20,000 more. So you get almost everything you want in Lexus at a lower price point, and it's actually quite an affordable vehicle, and it has almost everything you want. So I think overall it has a really good value. Hard to say about resale value yet, but because the Crown name is special, I hope that the resale value will be better than normal Toyota cars. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Regardless, it's actually a pretty good value. What else can I tell you about the Crown that makes it somewhat unique? Well, the Crown is still built in Japan at the Tsutsumi plant, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, resulting in spectacular quality and hopefully really good long-term reliability as well. Whereas the Lexus models I was talking about so far, the RX or maybe even NX, are both built in Canada. And I'll be honest with you, the Canadian plant is perhaps the best in the world, and the quality is right up there with models built in Japan. So I'm not really criticizing what's happening in other factories compared to Japan. But for some of you, being built in Japan means something, and therefore that doesn't make the Crown a little bit unique because it is built in Tsutsumi plant in Japan. I will say the quality of Canadian cars and Japanese cars are almost the same these days. But again, if you like Japan-built cars, well, then Crown means something to you. So far I talked about 6 different things that makes the Crown somewhat unique and special. Is there one more? Yeah, I think so. And the 7th point is also a bit of a surprise, because when Akio Toyoda first introduced the Crown, he showed 4 different models. That's right, 4 complete different Crown models. In North America, somehow we end up with the crossover or the sedan version of the Crown very first, and then we have the Crown Signia second. But in Japan, they also actually introduced the Crown Sport, which is like a very sporty version of the Crown series, and it's perhaps the best looking Crown, although I really like the Signia. And that Crown actually looks like a kind of combination of a Porsche Macan and a Ferrari SUV. Maybe it's the most exclusive looking Crown to ever come out. We don't know if that's going to come out to North American market yet, but they do have that in Japan and elsewhere. And also they have one more model, which is called a Crown Sedan, different sedan from what we have here, with a traditional design that is kind of mimicking what the old Crown used to be. So there's 4 different variations of the Crown. We got 2 of them so far. Maybe we'll get one more, hopefully the Crown Sport. And who knows, at some point we might even get the 4th one. So we could end up with a whole series of Crown models right here in both US and Canada. And that makes the Crown very special, because usually we don't get a car with the same name but 4 different body style. We do get like 2-door and 4-door, or maybe a wagon and a 4-door, but we don't end up with 4 distinct, complete different designs under the same nameplate. And that's what we have in Crown. So that really makes the Crown special, because it's not just one model, but right now it's 2 models, and potentially there could be 1 or 2 more. And the Crown nameplate suddenly stand out as one of the most diversified nameplate to show up from Toyota. So I think that makes it very unique. I really like the Crown Signia. It's the best looking crossover ever. If I have to criticize anything, maybe it's the driving portion, because this one has a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine with a hybrid system. So basically what you find in all the other Toyota cars, including RAV4 and Highlander, and therefore this one doesn't have the 2.4 liter turbo engine that's in the Lexus RX and also in the crossover version or the sedan version of the Crown. So it's a bit unusual that they decide to do this, because this engine is fine as a normal vehicle, but it's definitely a little bit underpowered and a little bit underperforming, I think. And also when you step on the gas, it's a bit noisy. So I really do hope and wish that Toyota will upgrade the powertrain, because in Japan you can get a plug-in hybrid as well. So I want to see that happen. Or better yet, put the 2.4 liter turbo instead of the 2.5 naturally aspirated, because that will give a lot more power and torque, like what we have in the Lexus RX and also the NX. But regardless, it is overall a great value. I think I recommend this over the other Crown model. It's better looking, has more space, it drives better, and even though it's a little bit underpowered, it's actually beautifully made car from Japan. So I hope you like my videos about the Crown Signia. A lot of people like the model. Go and drive it compared to other Toyota models, and you might choose this over a Highlander or RAV4 or even a Lexus RX. Anyhow, I hope you can give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.